right, here we go. Max Thoma, it is great to see you. How you doing?
It's great. Hey, thanks so much for having me on. Bruce, I've always called you Rabbi Elder, but before we started recording, you told me to call you Bruce, so it's going to be a little bit foreign for me, but happy to be along for the ride here today.
I told you you can call me whatever you want. So I got to let people know where this came from. So about a year and a half ago, it was in June of 22, Noah and I were at, what's the name of the South Bend Stadium? Four Winds? Is that what
Four
it's
Winds
called?
Field, yeah.
We were at Four Winds Field. You might remember this. I was there for the Burt Kreischer comedy tour.
Yes, exactly.
And I turned around, I took a picture of the box where you are, and I sent it to you. And I think you were recording a game at the time, and you did me a shout outs at that game.
Yeah, I
And
was doing a game in Davenport, Iowa, in the Quad Cities. So you actually took my place in my stadium while I was on the road.
there you go. And so I went through the whole routine with Noah for like the 19th time because you mentioned Bryce Elder being related to my name, Bruce Elder. And you might have said it on air that time. You said it one time on air. I know that. And I said to Noah, every time you say that, I remind you or me of the golfer Max Homa. So I kind of figured, and I'm not the only one to say that. So between Bryce Elder and Max Homa, Noah said you have to get him on the podcast. So here we are. So this is,
Beautiful.
as much as I love having you on, it was Noah's idea. I got to give him credit.
I love it. It's like our name doppelgangers in professional athlete form. I know
That's exactly.
When Bryce Elder made it to the MLB, I texted my mom and I'm like, man, whenever I see this guy's name, I think of Rabbi Elder because it always just looks like Rabbi Elder's pitching for the Braves.
And I'm much happier being Rabbi at Hakafa than pitching for the Braves. So here's where I want to go. This is a perfect segue because it's always a segue. We're recording this the day after the Super Bowl. How'd you feel about the Super Bowl?
I mean, more than anything, I'm hoping to be entertained. And I thought it certainly paid in that kind of lens because I mean that was one of the more entertaining Super Bowls last year. Obviously, we had like the highest scoring one ever. It was a neck and neck game the whole way. And Mahomes has three Super Bowls and he's been trailing by 10 plus points in all three. So I think at halftime everybody kind of knew or had a good view or vision of what the second half script might be, and I feel like it kind of fell into place that way. But
It
yeah,
got kind of boring.
I was
It
watching with
got
my girlfriend, who's not really much of a football fan, but has kind of become so over the last few months, and I think Taylor Swift has helped along for that ride. Um, but her and Travis Kelsey. But it was thoroughly entertaining, and it was a great finish, and it was a great game. It was obviously kind of stuck in the mud. It felt like for maybe the first 20 minutes. So I'm sure we were all pretty pumped to get some points there, especially late. But
yeah.
entertaining game through and through.
I thought the third quarter felt muddy too, actually. And I thought some of your. So let me ask you a question. I got like six questions associated with this.
Oh yeah.
Um, People ask me all the time if I judge other rabbis because I'm a rabbi. Do you analyze the announcers as you're doing this?
Absolutely. I'm sure you do. And I know that I do.
I don't.
Absolutely.
I don't. I don't.
Oh, okay.
I'm
Okay.
kidding.
We'll talk off air. But I'll tell you, it's actually been fun because a lot of my friends and family, especially even my parents now, ever since I started doing this in 2014, have been watching games and kind of hearing the announcer more so than they were before, as opposed to just kind of exclusively viewing the game. Now they're hearing the game more. So they judge them. And my dad will text me all the time. Oh, you're better than the guy doing this game, or well, why does he keep saying this, or what have you. But
So I'm not going to ask you to comment online about that. Just like, we'll do that one off
yeah,
line
yeah,
as well because I had some very strong feelings about it last night. I will not say anything because this is not about me. It's about us. But here's what I want to ask you since you mentioned Bryce Elder at the Atlanta Braves. You know I'm a Chicago Guardians fan.
Cleveland Guardians fan.
What did I say? Chicago?
You
That's
said
very
Chicago
funny.
Guard. Yeah,
Oh God, I'm tired. The
it's all good.
Cleveland Guardians fan. It's still hard for me to say. I liked other names better when they switched. I saw a little bit of rankling about the Chiefs about their name. So from your professional perspective, or just because you're in that world, how do you feel about the movement to need to change names of certain franchises?
I mean, I'm all for it. If there's a large, group of people who are offended just by, simply the name or, in former Indians case, obviously, they got rid of Chief Wahoo and kind of waited him out of, use on hats and jerseys for a few years before they actually changed the name.
Mhm.
Um, Yeah, I mean, I'm a Cleveland Guardians fan too. You know that through and through. So I'm more about it's Cleveland baseball than whatever the name may be.
Horrible
It's
name.
the jersey said, the jersey I got last year that my mom got me just says Cleveland. Because I don't really like the Guardians logo. I'm cool with the name, whatever they choose to be. I'm going to be a fan of Cleveland baseball. Um, that's kind of my thought. I mean, if the Chiefs change their name, anybody in Kansas City is a fan of Kansas City football. I don't think the name really should matter. And if it's offending people, and especially if it's offending a lot of people because it's derogatory or offensive, you know, I'm all for changing it. I don't think it matters a great deal.
I'd always heard, but what about tradition? I mean, isn't there something about tradition as a sports fan that you buy into?
Yeah, and I'm, I totally get that. And now I think whenever I'm watching Major League, they got the fun fans and the headdresses and stuff and the feathers. And that's all, great and fun games, but like I stopped wearing the Chief Wahoo logo a long time ago.
Hmm.
I guess I sometimes still wear Indian stuff, but I try to just wear Cleveland stuff. But I mean, you can kind of see it both ways. I get the history, and I'm obviously younger. So if you like, my mom's been a Cleveland Guardians fan since she was born in 1948. Sorry if I just aged you,
You
mom.
just totally aged her out. She's
That's
gonna
the
be so
second.
mad.
That's the second thing she's going to hate already. Because first, within 2 seconds of watching this, she's going to say, "Okay, Rabbi Elder is surrounded by about 120 books, and you have a blank white wall behind you." So that she's already gonna that's going to be an
Uh,
indictment already. So.
Sorry, Nancy. Okay, keep going. Um, so anyhow, okay. So I want to. So you talked the generational thing. I don't want to get into politics in the booth, but I'm going to ask a question about politics in the booth. Uh, have you noticed a generational difference in terms of how folks who work the announcing world, the announcing booth, view sports through this through a 2023, 2024 lens?
Like just in trying to be like more careful about like exactly kind of like specific details I might be saying in regards to something
Yeah,
or
and reactions to that. I mean, how do people feel about this movement to actually be sensitive to people?
yeah, well, I mean, certainly now that we live in a day where, there's always somebody listening, there's always somebody with a camera. Um, I think good announcers were always aware that, even if you weren't on air, even if you weren't live, if you were on headset or next to a microphone, there's always a chance that it's being recorded or that somebody's hearing it. So you always have to, tread lightly about what you're saying. And you probably shouldn't be, if you're worried about saying something in front of a microphone, you probably should not have said it, even away from a microphone, obviously.
Amen.
But yeah, I think good broadcasters have always been well aware of exactly what they're saying and what not to say. But there has certainly been a lot of blowback ever since Tom Brenneman with the Reds. Obviously, what he said, you feel like whenever somebody says anything like that, it happens quick, it happens swiftly, and it's deservingly so. But
So we have not, we've heard a lot about it in football. We've heard some about it of it in basketball, just in terms of, I was wondering if any of the players would have kneeled or knelt last night. None of them did, of course. Um, Basketball, WNBA, haven't heard a lot about baseball and progressive politics. Am I wrong about that? Um,
no, I think you're dead on.
can you speak to that?
Um, I'm not totally sure. I mean, obviously, the NFL is probably kind of the NFL and the NBA, you feel like are kind of always at the forefront of that. And that's kind of a historic thing they've always been with, right? I feel like in baseball, you really have only remembered it being so with Jackie Robinson back when he broke the color barrier in those early days of, Satchel Paige and Frank Robinson and people being the first, African American manager, first African American player in the AL, like Larry Doby. But yeah, I don't truthfully know. It feels like in the NBA, those players, because the best players in the NBA, you always know their faces so well and everything. Suppose a football player is always wearing a helmet every time you see them, basically. So it's always been easy to get behind things that Kareem is saying or LeBron is saying because you know the person, you know the face, you know the brand, and they've been around and existing for so long. I feel like the MLB, it might even be somewhat maybe a small amount related to popularity just because the sport is suffering from not being as popular, especially with amongst young people. But um, I'm not totally sure, and they probably have certainly fallen behind the NFL and the NBA in that realm.
What about down in the affiliates?
Um,
like in the minor leagues?
yeah, yeah, no, I know what you're saying. It's probably still the same. Um, yeah, I don't think I've seen a whole lot of it with any, team I've been with or league I've been with or opponent we've been visiting. Um, and generally these are like kids in minor league baseball, right? We're talking, the guys I announce are anywhere from generally 17 to 25. Um, and they are, grinding and working every day, and they have so much going on in their lives, and all they're trying to do is make it up to the next level. That they're thinking about so much, and they're young, and maybe that has to do a part of it as well. But yeah, baseball's certainly always been lagging behind. It feels like for a while.
When you decided to become a sports announcer, were you envisioning baseball? And which is the one you're hoping, or you have been hoping to land?
Baseball's always been my favorite sport to watch. It's always been my favorite sport to announce. Yeah, I grew up a Cleveland Guardians fan because my mom is from Cleveland. I'm a Wisconsin sports fan outside of baseball because my mom doesn't care about baseball. My dad's from Milwaukee. But my mom actually, and she'll be the first to tell you this, is the reason I got in, and the person who got me into sports broadcasting when I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do in college. And so it was kind of her idea. I, as a kid, always walked into the room and wanted to know everything that had happened in the game, what I had missed. And God forbid I was in the room and somebody came in who had missed the first half. I wasn't going to tell them just the score. I was going to break down plays, big moments, yeah, everything like that. And my mom used to always say that I would say something and then the broadcaster would say it. So she was trying to steer me towards sports broadcasting.
Uh-huh.
And I kind of just took it and ran with it there. Um, but yeah, she was certainly the reason I got into it. Her love of baseball is kind of the reason I love baseball. We're both obviously still hoping the Guardians will win a World Series because she hasn't seen one yet. Obviously, I haven't seen one either. But yeah, basketball's been.
1997, bottom of the ninth.
Oh yeah,
They
I
brought
know.
Jose Mesa, and I left to go watch a movie because I knew what was going to happen. And I was
Oh,
right. I went
I
to
can.
see Air Force One.
Oh well, Harrison Ford was great. So, but a small little funny tangent. So my first college internship was with Fox Sports Florida, who covers the Miami Marlins, and they're based in Fort Lauderdale. And my first day there in the summer of, obviously, I can tell you it was 2017 because my first assignment was, hey, it's the 20th anniversary of the Marlins beating the Indians
Oh man.
in the 1997 World Series.
Oh
We
man.
want you to log each of the games the Marlins won and compress them to be able to be viewed on TV in a certain amount of time. And I'm like, what a terrible first assignment that is. Oh my God.
That's
So
hilarious.
that was brutal. But
So my first student pulpit, because when you're in rabbinical school, they send you to places that can't afford full-time rabbis. My first one was in McGee, Arkansas. And the second time I was there, they took me deer hunting. I kind of equate the two. You having to
yeah,
do what you had to do with the Marlins was me having to go deer hunting.
yeah, that's almost like minor league baseball where they'll send you, to a town that I'm sure most people have probably never heard of.
Oh my God. It was great to be there though, because they stood for so much that I didn't, and I couldn't say anything. It forced me to shut up. Believe it or not, I shut up and I learned a lot, and a lot was reinforced. Right. So what have you found in your experience now? You've been doing it for 10 years, 8, 10 years. What have you found that has challenged you? And what have you found that's reinforced for you?
Well, the challenging aspect, I mean, so much has changed over 10 years. I didn't even realize it had been 10 years till honestly, you just said that.
Or you said 2014.
Oh yeah, no, 2014. The first game I ever did was a University of Miami women's basketball game, and we used to always just switch on the student radio. One person would do play by play for one half, one person would do the next half,
Uh-huh.
and this was back when women still did halves, which also ages it a little bit, I guess. But my partner left at halftime. It was my first ever game, and I guess this is just a little tangential story as well. But so the game finished. I was terrible. I'm sure it was awful. And I was just so happy to be done. I had a game under my belt. I was going to go call my dad and, hey, break down what went well. Please tell me a few things went well. And then the Miami coach came over and grabbed the headset next to me. And I guess when we win, we interviewed the coach. And nobody had told me that.
Oh,
I had no questions lined up. So I got one question just from like looking at the stats in front of me. And then in my head, I'm like, oh, I think they're playing Notre Dame next. hey, what's it going to be like? Notre Dame was a top 10 team in the
Uh-huh,
country.
uh-huh, uh-huh.
So I asked her about Notre Dame, and she very politely said, "Well, Florida State's next." And went on with it. She was so nice, so polite. Still is
That's
to this
great.
day. But so early on, the learning moments are just like forgetting that there's people listening and just learning to think, hey, it's just the person next to me, and we're just basically talking in the living room, right? We're basically just breaking down what we see, and trying to make things fun and entertaining and tell some good stories along the way and hope the game is good. Um, but from there, it was I think one of the biggest learning moments I had was my dad used to call me after every game in college that I did and tell me what went well and what went poorly. And there was a game where it was a baseball game, which obviously can, really grind on. Let's just assume it was 3 hours plus and not close, decided by 8 runs or more. And my dad just said, if you're not having fun, the listener's not having fun. And I kind of took that to heart because, I mean, it was so true. If I'm not enjoying myself, especially through the medium of the radio where they can't even see it, how can I expect anybody listening at home, even my father, to be having any kind of enjoyment from this? Um, and since then, it's kind of been just about getting more work, getting better, getting a lot of reps in, kind of developing a pattern in which I prep for every sport and how I prep for that sport every day. Um, and then last year, the baseball season is so rigorous. I had a new element I became the radio voice of the Chicago Fire as well, the MLS team in Chicago. And just so managing the tiny amounts of time I had, because truthfully, even though I'm in this field, I have not always been the best at remembering names, which is incredibly embarrassing in this field to admit out loud. But just, coming up with certain ways to always know everything I could remember about, the players, the key figures, the storylines, about everything in front of me. And then it's just kind of taking everything in like a sponge when you're watching on TV, because the people on TV on major networks are just incredible. And sometimes they make it seem so easy. And you're like, how could I not do this? And then you go out there and you rewatch the tape and you're like, oh my God, it's not that easy. The economy of words is something is a phrase I hear a lot now because I've done a lot more TV stuff in the last handful of years. In the radio, it's, you can pretty much talk endlessly on baseball for 3+ hours. But when it's TV, you have to pick your words so much more precisely and thread a much more fine needle and, leave room for the crowd to be heard, which was something that really kind of like on walk-off base hits took me a while to do.
Oh,
Get in,
yeah.
get out, let the people hear Four Winds Field, and then come back in. Because you want to talk over the whole thing, but you have to be patient, and kind of let the moment breathe.
Do you prefer to announce or color?
I prefer play-by-play. I rarely do color. In minor league baseball, we kind of like our team has basically two co-number one announcers, and we just switch back and forth, 3 innings, 3 innings, 3 innings. Um, Color, it's fun because it forces you to kind of watch the game a little bit differently.
Yeah.
Um, but I don't have that kind of expertise to do that at too high of a level, even in baseball, which is my most knowledgeable sport for sure.
But you're starting to get a little reputation.
Yeah,
I mean, obviously the Fire, you're also doing Northwestern women's basketball or something like that a little bit, or?
yeah. So I do freelance work in the non-baseball season, and I do women's basketball for a few schools, University of Missouri, Northwestern. I got Northwestern women on Wednesday up in Evanston. And then I work at some other schools too, like Illinois State, Chicago State, Evansville. I just kind of bounce around. I've been doing a lot of volleyball the last few years.
Really?
Yeah, a lot, decent amount of softball. Volleyball's a blast. I did a gymnastics meet last year, which I'm telling you, and that's another thing is you kind of learn in this field to kind of be a yes man when it comes to if somebody asks you to do
Yeah.
a gig, say yes. And the University of Missouri asked me to do a gymnastics meet because they had one that wasn't on like linear television, and it was number 12 Missouri versus number 8 Alabama, and I'm like, oh, it's kind of a big deal on a Friday night. So I'm like, hey, I don't truthfully know this sport well enough to do it, but you guys let me know 2 months before it. So I'm in. I'm going to go watch a bunch of gymnastics. I'm going to learn as much as I can. And I think that shed a better light on me for, getting more gigs with them going forward. Um, and truthfully, it was one of the more fun, enjoyable sporting events I've ever been around. The atmosphere was great. It's super fast paced. It's really short. And the people are just crazy athletic. I mean,
Yeah.
they're doing warm-ups and I'm like, my body's aching, just like sitting on the sideline.
Are you still playing baseball?
No, I haven't even swung a bat. I guess 2 years ago we took a little BP at the end of the season at home, but
Uh-huh.
it didn't go well. So
So are you ever have you ever had a moment in which you're sitting because do you travel with the team or is it only home? Well, you do travel because you were in Iowa.
yeah,
So
we split our travel about 50-50, me and my partner Brandon.
so what's when you travel and you're in somewhere in the middle of nowhere, have you ever like stopped and go, what's a nice Jewish boy from the North Shore of Chicago doing here?
Yeah, maybe not in those exact words, but I certainly have thought that,
Well, what
no
are the
doubt.
words? Do tell. What are the words you use?
Well, minor league baseball, I mean, like you talked about with going to Arkansas, is fun because you get to go to all these small towns that don't have, pro sports
Jews. Jews that don't
in a
have
major
Jews.
league. Yeah, that too. Yeah, I mean, now that I break down the ones that I'm generally in. But yeah, it's entertaining to see like, I guess small town USA. We go to Davenport, Iowa, and the Quad Cities. We go up to Grand Rapids, Michigan. We're out in Fort Wayne. I love going to Fort Wayne, Indiana. We're in Dayton,
Yeah.
Ohio. We're in, East Lake, which is just outside of Cleveland on the east side. Um, we go all over, and it's fun to see the Midwest and go on these road trips and long bus rides.
You know that song, Wherever You Go, There's Always Someone Jewish?
I don't know
Wherever
that
you
song.
go, there's always someone Jewish. There's a whole song, but when you become the Jew wherever you go, then you just affirm that song for everybody else. So
Yeah,
thank you for
wherever I go, I'm there. Yeah.
that. um, Not a big Jewish world you travel in, the world of announcing. That's a question.
um, I would disagree with that statement in terms of at least anecdotally, the people I've met along the way. I can tell you that I've done a few freelance games. Funny enough, so I'm in South Bend, Indiana right now. Um, uh, the three sporting events, I'm trying to think if it's three or four. I might have done four sporting events at Notre Dame, and each time it's been an all Jewish booth, I believe.
Really?
And each time with a different partner. So that's always been kind of fun. Um,
Maybe they put all the Jews together.
yeah, that's quite possible. um, but yeah, at least like I said, at least anecdotally speaking, I have met a lot of Jews along the road here.
Mhm.
At least in the play-by-play world, they're less so in the color commentary world.
So I want to jump back again. You were talking about your world's largely 18 to 25 year olds that are just trying to put their heads down and just make it up to the next level. You're double A, right? I thought double A was the jump to the majors more than triple.
We're high A.
Oh, you're
You
high
go
A.
from us to double A,
Ah, got it.
and
Okay.
like the large majority of the players are 21 to 24.
Talk a little bit about that energy that goes on there, can you? I'm just kind of curious about it.
Most like the energy we see like with the clubhouse, like in the
Yeah,
guys.
kind of like that, or what you just see in terms of the guys and yeah, just your feeling about them in general.
Uh,
I'm asking for specific
oh
people.
yeah, minor league baseball is thrilling because what you have at a clubhouse is generally about 28 to 32 people on our team. And they truly do come from all walks of life. You'll have guys who, because minor league players are all making the same amount of money, but it's really how much have they signed for? And you have guys that have signed for, 3.5 million who are sitting next to undrafted guys or guys who were signed in the 37th round and, you know, are scrapping for everything they have. And we have guys from the deep south, guys from out west, guys from the northeast. And it's like a melting pot. It's great to see how everybody interacts and everybody cheers for each other and everybody has each other's backs, no matter what. And I think what fascinates me so much that like I don't think is really covered or people really think about is we have so many foreign born players. We always have a decent amount of people from the Dominican. We'll have, people from Curacao, Venezuela, Colombia, um, Mexico as well. And a lot of these kids are kids still. They're coming over. They're younger because they usually sign at about 16 years old and they don't get drafted. So when we have them, they're generally about 20 and 21. They're usually the younger guys on the team too. They're learning English every day too. It's not like on top of everything they're doing for baseball, on top of living in our case, living in Indiana. You're not back at home. There's not a lot of Spanish speakers in South Bend, Indiana. They're coming to work every day and taking English as a foreign language when they get to the ballpark, and they're getting to the ballpark earlier than anybody else. and then they got to actually go do their job. So I got to be down in the clubhouse last year, which I had never seen. When a few players, I think we had three guys graduate from English class. And it was like maybe one of my favorite moments of the entire season because
Why?
the clubhouse was going crazy. We had some people from the Cubs who were traveling around who were there for the day. And each of the guys that graduated went up and spoke a little bit in English too. And I'm telling you, that was more joy than I've seen, in a sports environment that wasn't related to a team victory, maybe ever. And I thought that was kind of a good little microcosm of minor league baseball.
So you've seen that that's a great story. That's actually a great story. You've seen a team and its energy when it's up because you all won the championship not last year but the year before, right?
Yeah.
And you've seen them when they're down.
Hmm.
Talk about again the energy there, the difference. Have you noticed a difference? Do people really invest if they think that they're there in passing? Do they really invest in the culture of the club?
I would say yes. And the funny thing about minor league baseball is um, minor league baseball isn't necessarily coached or managed to win like day to day. It's because it's about development. That's always the word. It's trite, but that's always the one word that anybody will go to. We're not gonna pinch hit almost the entire season. We're gonna bring in a guy. He's gonna pitch a full inning, and if he's not doing well, until he gets to 30 pitches, he's probably just gonna eat that inning. And that's how guys learn and develop and everything. Um, but guys in 2022 when we won the championship, oh yeah, they totally bought in. And on paper, we were the best team, and it was just a matter of putting it together. And our series are really short in the playoffs. They're just 3 games. Or they're just 5 games, excuse me. So anything could happen. And no, wait, the first one was 3, and the second one was 3, and they are both 3. 2 years, and I can't remember. We weren't in the playoffs last year. Yeah, so just 3 game series, like I said, like I meant. So anything can happen. And we had to rally and win the last 2 games on the road to win it all. And that was the locker room afterwards. I'm sure they had to redo the whole thing. And funny that they actually did, but I think they were going to anyways because the celebration was just so raucous. But yeah, guys absolutely bought in. And as much as it's about development and not winning, winning creates a culture of winning, and I think winning begets more winning. And the Cubs minor league system has been doing a lot of that recently. So a lot of the guys from our team that won the championship went up to Double A the next year, and they won the championship there too. And as much as winning certainly helps, it certainly does not hurt, right?
And they include you in that celebration. They continue consider you part of the team.
Oh yeah, absolutely. We got to go out to spring training last year and grab a ring as well. So I have a ring with Thoma on it, which was fantastic. And they had everybody from the front office execs of the Cubs came in and gave a speech about the team, and we were all out there in Mesa, Arizona, and that was a blast. Um, yeah, I mean, there's so many elements of minor league baseball that are fascinating. Just to go back to like the Spanish thing real
Yeah,
quick,
go.
it's amazing. A lot of times, so we do a pregame show, which is short on the field, on the scoreboard, just for the people that are in the stadium as they're filing into their seats. And we do like a 3 to 5 minute interview each time as well. And then post game, like you see on TV, we win the game, we'll interview, hey, you were the player of the game, you had 3 hits. Talk to me about it, that kind of thing. And a lot of the Spanish speakers have never been interviewed in English before. And they don't do it at the lower levels in our organization. So we're the first chance they get, not only to do an interview, but to do it like live, either on TV, on the radio, or at
In
least with
English.
everybody in the crowd there.
In English.
Um, yeah, and that helps them a lot too. And it's fascinating. You try to not put anybody in a situation where you are rambling too long of a question or too hard to understand words, and keep things simple. But yeah, that actually it's funny because that actually provided one of our favorite interview moments in the championship run. When I asked one of our players, Fabian Pertuz, who's from South America, a question. I don't think he understood me, and he just looked at the camera and just said, "I just want to make the playoffs." And it was awesome. It was like the middle of summer. It's minor league baseball, and like here's Pertuz, who doesn't do a lot of interviews. That might have been his first of the year. It might have been his first ever in English, and he just wanted to make the playoffs, which we all just loved and kind of rallied around.
Do you ever see a player and go, they're going to make it? And you ever see one and to say, and are you right?
Yeah, certainly. And we've had the pleasure of having a few first round picks of late here. And you can definitely tell the guys that are going to be fast tracked because they go out there and they're just, either their stuff's untouchable if they're on the mound. We had a Cubs first round pick who was a top 10 pick here, Cade Horton from Oklahoma. And you looked at his stuff and what he did to opposing batters. And every week when we get the starting rotation, you're like, it's funny in minor league baseball too, because you're like, hey, I hope we still have Cade. But you also wish him well.
Well, exactly.
Right. So at the end of the season, it's a lot of goodbye. I hope I don't see you again. Like I don't want to see you next year because that means you either stayed here or you got hurt and you're on a rehab or something. But there's always going to be a few guys around the league and around on our team who you just absolutely know we're going to make it. And it's a joy to have them as long as we do when they're here.
Yeah. Do you find it? So I'm thinking of the Fire, who haven't done so well lately, past couple of years. Do you find it's more pressure for you to make something of the experience when they're not doing well because the team can't do it themselves, or is it more pressure when they're winning?
It's a good question. My thought really around this is so last year I was hired to do the Fire a few games into the season, and they had never had English on the radio before, and their Spanish radio broadcasts are super popular in the Chicagoland area. I definitely have more listeners than I do. But that said, I hadn't done a ton of soccer in my life, so my focus was so much just on learning all the proper lingo, learning as much as I could from other radio soccer announcers, just because I didn't know what that was like. I'm like, I went in before I listened to it, not even sure do I have to announce every pass? Because if so, I'm going to need a thesaurus for the word pass, and I'm going to need to throw in like every single one of these words. And obviously you have it on the top of your head, but when it's 90 minutes of continuous passing.
And soccer fans are crazy.
Oh,
They
yeah,
are
absolutely.
Passionate. They're so much fun, but go ahead.
Oh, they're the best.
Yeah.
But my thought last year was so much for the first few months on just trying to not mess up, which actually was kind of funny because that harkens me back to like my college days when we make our reels and try to send it out to teams for if they're hiring for jobs or just in general to try to get like a freelance game or two or what have you. In baseball, it's always about, I was always thinking, hey, get that perfect half inning. You're always looking for that perfect half inning. And my first few baseball jobs, as soon as I said anything, you slip up or whatever, you say something inaccurate in a half inning, I'm like, well, that half inning's thrown away. Which is a really terrible way to think about anything, really. Yeah. But I felt like I was trying to do that for a while in soccer last year. And then we played a lot very well, I should say, in September and had some good stretches with the Fire. But I know I haven't answered your question either.
That's okay.
Soccer was just very tough for me, I think, getting acclimated that first year. So our first game is in 16 days. And this year I'm trying to bounce back, and I'm hoping to tell a lot more stories this year than just
because it's just you
trying to hone down on exactly what's happening. No, I have a partner who used to play in MLS too, who's terrific, and without him, I would be nothing up there. And that's actually another element of play-by-play that I'm getting better at. That is what the greats always do, and that is they really hold up the person next to them. They really make that person look better and more knowledgeable.
Of course,
and like they are
look better.
Oh, yeah. And like they are the key to understanding everything that's happening.
In the midst of your announcing, have you ever been stopped in your tracks by a player? Like just the play that they did or something just completely freezes you because you're so amazed?
We had Pete Crow Armstrong was the Cubs' #1 prospect here the year we won the championship, and he did a few things. He's so in baseball, they grade you 20 to 80 scale for, every category is 20 to 80. And there's rarely anybody 80 in anything. But Pete Crow Armstrong, who played a few games with the Cubs last year at the big league level, is an 80 grade defensive center fielder. And he does stuff in batting practice where you're just like, who's attempting that? He'll be full speed on the warning track on a ball he shouldn't have never gotten to. And he'll just catch it behind his head. Just do a little behind the back. But he does a lot of stuff.
You were a center fielder, weren't you?
Yeah. But he does a lot of stuff. That. Yeah. Oh, yeah. He does a lot of stuff like Javi Baez did on the bases, too, where you think he's got absolutely no chance to do something, and then he swim moves and slides, and he's electrifying. And I vividly remember a triple he hit down the right field line in 2022, where the ball kind of squirted away from the third baseman. There was nobody out. There was no reason for him to try to score, and he tried to score. And an incredible slide. He got in, and he's sitting on his tuchus with his legs out and his arms in the air, right on home plate, just like doing one of these primal roars. And you're like, this kid's special.
Wow.
And there's been a lot of that. Last year, I think we were all really hoping one of the best prospects in baseball was this kid, and still is, this kid named Ethan Salas with the Padres, who batted in spring training with the big league Padres at age 16 last year, and then turned 17 during the season, was in our league, and we were set to play him, and he got promoted again. So he was 17 and hit Double-A,
Wow.
and he's a catcher. And I'm sure that would have been one where you just saw him on the field, and you're like, this guy's built different.
I watched Caitlin Clark playing women's basketball with Iowa, and the stuff that she does blows my mind.
Where did you see her play?
I haven't seen her live. I've seen her
Oh yeah,
on last year. Some of this I haven't watched her at all this year. Some of the stuff I watched, and I watched her freshman year as well. Some of the stuff that woman can do with the basketball just blows my mind.
she hit a buzzer beater to win a game versus Michigan State this year. I don't know if you caught that highlight, and it's just fabulous. And I don't know if they over mic'd or something the net, but the sound the net made when the ball, I've never heard it that loud. Yeah, and she's, I think, 8 points now away from breaking Kelsey Plum's record. Almost had it over the weekend.
Wow. Are you
But
a
yeah,
are you a WNBA fan?
I don't, I would say no. I just because I haven't seen it much. But I love women's college basketball.
Yeah.
And what Caitlin Clark has done for women's sports, it's fun because I do a lot of women's basketball. I do a lot of women's volleyball. And the popularity with those sports in the last handful of years has just skyrocketed.
Yeah.
And when I do games, it's so obvious why. And especially with volleyball, because the athletes out there are just having a blast. And it really doesn't even matter what the score line is. They get together and huddle after every point, and they're just, psyching each other up every time. It's a treat.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. All right. So I want to completely shift gears. I could go on talking forever on this stuff with you, and I really appreciate your openness and sharing. This is coming way out of left field, and it just popped into my head, so I apologize. Um, Given everything going on with Israel and Hamas, I have been talking to a lot of folks in their 20s or hearing from who are way to the left on the issue. And I've been talking to lots of folks who are way on what I would call the right. And I really haven't talked to anybody that I don't know that's neither on the left or the right. Folks, a number of people your age have called me just to ask me, for direction or just to talk things through. As someone that I perceive, and I could be completely wrong with you, as someone as I could perceive that has not been spending a lot of time on the nuances of Middle East politics, is that a fair thing to say about you?
Yeah.
As a Jewish young adult in your 20s, what has been your feeling about what's going on in America around it, or what's going on with it around there? I told you it was way out of right field, left field, whatever you want to call it. So it is a big shift. I'm not trying to put you on the spot. I'm just curious.
Yeah, I guess the segue there was that it was out of left field if we're going from from sports to politics. And I do try to stay up with, current events as much as I can in any regard. But I mean,
Just
it's so
your gut. Give me your gut.
I feel like you just become so numb to it all. I mean, October, after the 7th was just horrifying. And I hate reading, details about all the kids dying and everything, but it's such a necessary thing to read and take in because you have to know that it's happening. But yeah, I mean, obviously October 7th was absolutely devastating. And it's crazy because I did birthright my freshman year in college. And when you're there and, in our group, we have 7 members of the Israeli military. And I think only one was actually in combat. He was a tank commander. But you just learn about how whenever somebody gets taken, as a hostage or anything, the responsibility that Israel has to get them back, especially when it comes to, any member of the IDF or anything, because they're not there voluntarily, right? They're mandated to be there. And And it's just this life that they live that is just you could never, as a person who was raised in the US, you could never imagine it in a million years. The constant threat. But I mean, it's been horrifying I hate to say like it's been horrifying on both sides, but um, I mean, you understand the response, given that, when you hear the things being said by Hamas on the other side and just about, complete annihilation. You get what's necessary in order to combat that, especially after, a surprise attack that kills thousands of people. Um, but yeah, I mean, I'm just saying I'm numb to it because it's been 4 months and you feel like you're kind of reading the same type of storyline each day
Yeah,
about updates with hostages or little ones that have been passed away. That I know that scrolling list of Palestinian, excuse me, children that passed away and how many of them weren't even 1 years old was just obviously a tearjerker.
devastating, devastating,
Um, and
devastating.
obviously there's no good and evil, right? I mean, it's just like everything is so opaque and it takes so much trying to deduce what is right and what is wrong in it. I don't know. I can't speak to it certainly, and that should be obvious right now. But I'm
No,
not
you
the
are.
best at it.
So let me
But
ask you. No, no, no. Let me ask you then. Have you been at any time made to be, or forced to be, or jumped in as the tokens? We already said there are a lot of Jewish announcers around there. Are you in environments where you feel like you have to represent? And have you been called upon to represent?
I wouldn't say that. No,
Do people
I
know you're
mean,
Jewish other than calling out to your rabbi every so often on the announcement? As a,
not really. Like there's not a lot of Jews in South Bend, so I feel like maybe I represent here for sure. In our organization, there's not many either. Um, but yeah, I'm not sure on that one.
so you haven't felt like you've had to. Have you ever
No.
felt uncomfortable as it being not many Jews in South Bend or wherever you might be? You ever felt uncomfortable around that?
I wouldn't say I've ever felt uncomfortable. Um, I would say I'm someone who, off and on, I've liked to wear a Star of David around my neck. Um, but I was kind of feeling there was so much hostility in the aftermath of, Israel's initial response to Hamas and Palestine that there was so much hostility, and you're reading about what's happening on college campuses, and obviously that's always going to be a kind of a boiling pot area where that stuff is going to be first happening, but I would have been a little bit, I feel like, nervous to wear that in certain areas in late October or in November, just because there was so much, you know, negative things being said about Israel's immediate and aggressive response in Gaza. And so many people were, and especially I think so many young people were learning about the plight of Palestine and what they've had to deal with for so long that they were, immediately kind of jumping on their side as well when it came to everything. And especially when it came to, the mass publicity of all the kids that were dying and all the innocent people as well.
So my question for you is not why you decided not to wear it because you're uncomfortable. You said every so often you like to wear it. When did you like to wear it and why?
Okay, this is not the answer you were assuming.
I'm
I
not
actually
assuming
just,
any answer. I'm just asking the question.
if you ask my mom, I lose a lot of things. So, sometimes I have it, and whenever I have it, I wear it a lot. Funny enough, I actually ordered a new one a few days ago. Um, so hopefully it's getting dropped off in the mail today or tomorrow.
Why
But
do you wear
I
it?
honestly would say that, and maybe this is a bigger thing that I've never really realized, but I would say I tend to like to wear it after I see people wearing it. Like if I bump into some old Jewish friends or whatever, what have you, and I see them wearing it, I feel like I'm doing a disservice by not wearing something like that.
Why?
I know that's the bigger issue. I don't know. I do like to represent, as you said. So
Has it always
I
been
don't,
that
it's
way for
because
you?
it's something I take pride in. And I was raised Jewish, and my mom was always going to raise her children to be Jewish, and I love that. And I loved also just being, able to teach people about it growing up because I grew up in Winnetka, and there are Jews, but there aren't a ton of them certainly. And telling kids when you're growing up, especially who don't know. what Passover is, or even what Hanukkah is, or anything like that, and just kind of teaching people about it. It was almost like fun to be a little bit different and to have like a different path and tell people like you're learning Hebrew and you're going to Hebrew school and Sunday school and you're going to have a bar mitzvah and tell people about what that is and what that means and everything.
Yeah. You liked growing up in Winnetka.
Um, I like my friends in Winnetka. I think my parents would have much rather had us raised in um like Evanston or Wilmette, maybe.
That was your parents. I said you.
I loved being in Winnetka, but I understand it for sure.
Yeah. Say more.
I don't know. Maybe in a different audience, in a different setting.
Okay. That was a great deflection. I'll let you have it. I'll let
Well,
you
I'm
have
used
it.
to being a broadcaster, and I'm not supposed to pick a side on it. When we do, it's funny when we do like radio games for the South Bend Cubs. I'm a homer, quote unquote. Not through and through, but it's all through. All of our listeners are South Bend Cubs fans, so you have to steer that way a little bit,
Yeah.
obviously. And when we do TV games, you're 50-50 split. So it's also like just trying to be positive about everything.
Yeah.
Which is super easy for me because I'm a positive person. I really enjoy most people's company. I don't really dislike many people in the world at all. My mom will second that. Might be able to name a few people that I don't like. But yeah, so I'm not used to taking a strong stance on things, at least on air for sure, because you don't really want to disinterest or disassociate yourself from anybody that might be tuning in.
And for the 25 people who will be listening to this, you never know. No, I always say that I grew up in Youngstown. And so I always say that it was a great place to say you're from. And I still appreciate that, even though my inner Kishkas get really kind of tense every time I think about Youngstown. Though I love to kid with my kids about forcing them to move back there.
Uh,
But so I no, I get that, and I
See, I
appreciate it.
like saying I'm from Chicago, but then if you get somebody who's actually from Chicago, um, I'm not from Chicago. I mean,
Well, you are. So what do you
yeah.
like? So let me ask you that then. What do you like about being from Chicago?
Um, I just feel like I don't know, heart of the Midwest, tough, kind of like I don't even know blue collar really, but I always love being in Chicago just because I love the city. In general, I love being by the lake. I love cold winters and being able to earn the great weather that we get in late spring and summer. I think it was also great, like when I was at the University of Miami. It's funny how it's mostly people from the East Coast and from the Northeast specifically, really. And it's crazy. They don't know where a lot of things are that aren't on the East Coast. They don't actually, a lot of them, my freshman year on my floor, could not locate Illinois on a map.
Yeah.
And a lot of them would be like, well, that's Illinois. And like, no, that's Indiana, actually. And they wouldn't even necessarily know that Chicago was in Illinois. And I'm like, it's kind of nice to grow up in the Midwest. I don't know because we weren't on a coast, but I know where every state is and have since fourth grade. And I kind of just thought we all did.
So the largest, I was just telling someone today that the outside, I went to IU, Indiana, and outside of Indiana and Chicago, the largest group of people that go to Indiana are Jews from Long Island. There's a
That's
huge, huge
most of my friends
population.
at school were Jews from Long Island.
Yeah, they go everywhere. And they have no idea where they're going. They didn't know they were going to Indiana. They actually had no idea. Some of them
Oh,
thought they
really?
were going to Iowa. Some of them thought they were going to Illinois. I'm being totally serious. They had no freaking clue. But that's the East Coast,
Yeah.
right? That's the East Coast. As I was telling this person today, it's because from Northern Virginia all the way to Boston, almost to Maine, you have everything there that you possibly need. Who needs the rest of the country,
Yeah.
right? And
That's
thank
fair.
God because it gives us the rest of the country.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, I got like one more question or two more questions. First of all, how are your brothers doing?
Brothers are doing great.
Yeah.
Everybody's doing very well. My oldest brother, Evan, has a 1 year old son and is due to have baby number two
Yeah.
in a handful of months. So I'm very excited. Baby number two will also be a boy. So my mom is getting a little desperate. She would love for there to be another girl in our family eventually.
Yeah. Great. And how about your other brother?
Trevor's doing very well out in LA. Living with his girlfriend. They moved into a new place a handful of months ago in
Yeah.
Santa Monica, and they're loving it. They're both doing well.
So you sound really happy.
Yeah, I kind of run this way.
Yeah.
I generally am a pretty positive person, I like to say. So,
In your dreams, with a little bit of touch of reality, where are you in 10 years?
oh, dream with a touch of reality. How big is that touch? Yeah, I would love to be with an MLB team for sure. And if not there, at some D1 college doing sports. But yeah, I mean, ideally, I was actually thinking I had a car ride from South Bend to Chicago last week. I make that drive all the time, but I was thinking about what it would be like to, because I just finished a baseball book my mom got me. It was actually written by a guy from Cleveland. So there's some good Cleveland moments in there. Hard to find. Um, but about what it would be like for me to actually call the Guardians winning the World Series. Because I feel like the only time we win the big game is when I'm watching Major League and it's Bob Uecker saying, the Indians win it. The Indians win it. Oh my God, the Indians win it. And that's still just the ALCS. But yeah, I would love to be with an MLB team 10 years from now. I'd be 38. Yeah, that'd be something I'd love. And we have had the great experience. The guys in South Bend that work here, that we work with, are terrific. And they put us into success in so many regards and set us up for success. So the last couple of years at the end of the season, we've actually gone and done a game at Wrigley Field,
Oh, wow.
and they give us an auxiliary booth. There's always empty booths at any stadium, just in case, Cubs are in the World Series. They need a lot more press and a lot more media. And all of a sudden you'll have, people doing the game in Japanese and in
Yeah.
Korean, right? So they need booths for them. And it's Wrigley, so they're ancient. And everybody in the press box can actually hear everything we say, which is pretty funny. But so we've done basically a practice game, not out to anybody, like nobody's listening to it, but we have the headsets on and we're just recording it into our computer for the experience, and then to hopefully, if we get some good innings, use for our reels and resumes too. And that's been terrific, and it's been really nice to get a dose of what that actually feels like. Because even though there's nobody listening, all of a sudden you're at Wrigley in late September and they're in the wild card chase, and it's a rubber game versus the Pirates, which was amazing for us this year because we got to go on the field pregame. And there were actually a few players that I'd announced with South Bend who had made it up to the big league club
Oh,
and were
awesome.
there and
Oh,
taking batting
awesome.
practice or talking to family. So that was really eye opening.
That's great. So I want you to promise me something.
Yes.
And here's it. When you are there, not if, but when you are there, I will never ask you for free tickets because I don't do that. But I will ask you for permission to come up to the press box to be able to say hi to you.
Oh,
Okay?
yeah. Believe me, absolutely a given. I'll let you up whenever and whenever.
Okay, awesome.
And I will happily on air tell the story of the time we went to the Spurgeon Museum and went to the subway nearby. And I was I've never been more oblivious in my life than, is it seventh or eighth grade? Shadow Day? I can't remember. When I was with you at Subway and I ordered a Philly cheesesteak, and then you ordered every vegetable on the menu and looked at me and said, it's nice of you to keep kosher.
Beautiful moments. Beautiful moments. That's awesome.
The
My friend,
oblivious middle schooler who was just completely clueless.
I love the fact that you wanted to do that with me. That's when I was still going. I was still working at the Jewish Council on Urban Affairs. That was a great
Oh,
day.
yeah. That is when you actually left me during a meeting and you came back like 30 minutes later and you're like, I'm so sorry. I couldn't deal with that.
And how was the meeting?
And then we fed the goats.
We did feed the goats. You're very good. You got it. You got it. You're the one I went
Yeah.
to feed the goats with. That's right. Oh my God, I completely forgot. See,
Oh,
I know
I
how
will
to
always,
Go on. Go
I
on.
was just saying, I always love that day and I always love that story. Because that was so much fun because it's shadow day and you get the day off and everybody goes to work with their mom or dad. And
Yeah,
I'd
why
been
did
to
you
work
come with me in the first place? Why did you choose me?
well, I'd been with my dad to work a million times, and I'm like, how fun would it be? I was a rabbi for Halloween in fourth grade, by the way. Still my best costume.
We
I'll
should have
send you
gotten.
I'll send you a picture later, and if I can't find it, my mom certainly has it. With one of like the little mini Torahs they give you in Sunday
Yeah.
school when you're young. I had one of those. Had the beard, had the yarmulke, had the tallis.
That's great because that's
It
what
was
I
a
look
good
like.
outfit. I actually didn't have a suit, I think, because I was in like third grade, so I think I was wearing like my mom's old one. Um, but yeah, I was so curious as to what a day in the life of a rabbi would be like, and our whole family loved you growing up, still does, still do, and
Beautiful.
I was like, I was so curious, and it was such an entertaining day, and it was honestly, it's truly a story that I'll have forever, and I'm not gonna forget that day.
Amen. Amen. Well, I'm glad you chose it because I enjoyed it as well, as much as I've enjoyed this. I really appreciate you taking the time. And I look forward to seeing where you go. And I look forward to the next time I get to see you in person.
Yeah,
So,
hopefully it's in a booth, and hopefully it's soon.
amen. And with that, until next time, we'll see everyone.